Welcome to the Friday edition of Juan's World, and contrary to what you can see here, I'm not actually going to give you a recipe. I don't normally give them on Friday anyway, but I just wanted to show you this because it's so delightful. It's Cambodian spices mixed in a nice pork broth with some pork, and it's galangal and lemongrass, kefir leaves, limes, hot peppers. Quite delicious, and that's going to be my lunch today. So I'm starting there, and my topic today is going to be ambition and hierarchies within Asian cultures. I've been watching a lot of Netflix movies, and my subscription to Netflix here in Cambodia gives me a lot of Korean and Japanese TV series. And what I've noticed is that a very large number of them deal with individuals who are mavericks, bucking the system of respect and loyalty and honor and corporate hierarchical movements and so forth, that there seems to be in East Asia, maybe in general, not so much in Southeast Asia, there tends to be an interest in overturning the long-standing cultural model of hierarchy that probably goes back to feudal times in both Korea and Japan and China also. So I want to discuss where those hierarchies come from, what it's like to live in a culture that is dominated by them, and why I think things may be changing. So let's leave my pork boiling away here, and let's get on with the topic at hand. Well, so as not to disappoint, here's the dish ready to serve up. I added some ramen, and it's just delightful. I'm going to have my lunch, and then we'll start talking about ambition and corporate hierarchies. So I haven't really purposed this binge watching of Korean and Japanese movies and TV shows, but because that's what the bulk of my Netflix subscription allows, I've been doing it, and I'm just really curious as to why both Japan and South Korea at this point are flooding the airwaves with these series and movies about challenging authority. So I certainly know from my time in Japan and also my time with Japanese colleagues that Japan deep down is a rigidly like corporate, hierarchical, authoritarian society. And one of the things I've thought about for a very long time as an anthropologist is how certain kinds of worldviews, what is sometimes called in sociology zeitgeists, how these zeitgeists just perpetuate themselves even as governments change. The government in Russia was imperial and feudal in the 19th century. and then they overthrew the czars and all of that paraphernalia, and then people like Lenin and Stalin took over, and they were not czars in name, but certainly in nature. And Mao Zedong was every bit a Chinese emperor. And so Japan's inner social workings have not really changed for a very long time, even though Japan itself has been through numerous cultural revolutions. But deep down there is this authoritarian, rigid class and corporate structure based on hierarchy, with respect going up the hierarchy regardless of merit. You have to respect your boss and do all kinds of things to honor your boss. Even if your boss is incompetent, doesn't matter. And so many of these movie series are pointing out the flaws in this system, are saying, why are we allowing this? And there's always a maverick, there's always a lone wolf, an individualist who bucks all of this, kowtowing and showing respect regardless up the system. There's always, and it's usually a woman, but not always, saying, screw this, I'm better than this, I'm just going to do what I want, and I'm going to work outside the system, and I'm going to show you all up. Now what I wonder, the question I'm asking is why this is happening now. Are Japan and South Korea undergoing social change? And I really don't know, because I don't live there. But it seems like there is something in the wind. And as an anthropologist, I'm intrigued. You see, one of the things that perplexes me endlessly is how you go about promoting social change. And I think about that in the context of the United States mostly, sometimes the UK, but I'm not really very concerned about the UK. I didn't live there very long, although I am a UK citizen among my other citizenships. But it's not a country that interests me, or nation. So there are several countries in the UK. I've got family there, of course, so I have personal interests. But the United States interests me more because I lived there. I've lived there most of my life. I haven't lived there for 10 years, but my son was born there and lives there. And I've got a lot of former students there. I worked there for 35 years. I lived there for over 40 years, most of my life. So I am concerned with the fact that in this current election cycle, and I'm recording this on November the 5th, so I don't know the results of the election yet in terms of the president. It looks like the House is going to stay Democrat and the Senate is probably going to stay Republican, and it looks as if Biden will eke out a win, don't know. Anyway, what concerns me, and what people have not really paid much attention to over decades, since the 60s even, is that the worldview of most people in the United States has never changed. We have to face the fact that 50% approximately of the US population, or the electorate at least, are quite happy with racism, they're quite happy with sexism, they're quite happy with white nationalism. How do you change that? And for a long time, I'll actually do it physically, like throw my hands up, say, I have no idea. It's embedded in the culture. The founding fathers were slave owners. George Washington was a slave owner. Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner. So that when they say, in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, things like all men are created equal, they meant men. They didn't mean that women were included, and they didn't add, but should have added, all white men. So it's like built into the foundations of the culture. How do you change that? You don't change it by changing governments. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away just because you get a new generation. I'm not pinning my hopes on Gen X or millennials or whatever to somehow be any better, because their parents are, from my generation is deeply mixed between people who are more open-minded and those that are not. So it doesn't change generation to generation. So my big question has always been, how does cultural change happen? And my immediate answer is, I don't know. But these shows on Japanese and South Korean television seem to be suggesting that things are changing because the people want change. Like, there are some people, maybe the majority even, are quite happy to go to work, in their what looks like a uniform, white shirt, black pants, maybe black tie and black jacket, what they're called salary men. Work until maybe 8 o'clock at night, and then go out drinking with the boss until early hours, and then go home. There's a lot of people who are quite happy with that, but it looks like there's a lot who are not so happy anymore. And so things may be changing. Don't know. I don't know how cultural change happens any more than I know how language change happens. We know that words appear or disappear, or grammatical structures change. And the mechanism is unclear. It's not because we want those things to happen. We don't necessarily want a certain word to appear or a certain grammatical structure to change. It happens. And cultures change, and we just don't know why. If I knew why, if I could find some kind of formula, I'd be very famous. But I don't know why they change. So why is Japan seeming to be unhappy with the hierarchical corporate structure, and Korea too? I'm not sure which one is more enmeshed in that system, but I know Japan better than I know Korea. I also know from Korean friends that an awful lot of people leave Korea permanently because they hate the system, and they'd much rather live in the United States or even in South America. There was a very small but growing Koreatown in Buenos Aires when I was living there, because people were just sick of growing up in the Korean corporate structure. The irony is, as I knew from talking to people working in Buenos Aires, is that they often bring that corporate structure with them, and they're no happier in Buenos Aires than they were in Seoul. Anyway, I'll continue this next week, so meanwhile, please tell your friends, please like, please subscribe, and have a jolly good weekend. And by next week, I hope we'll have a more settled political environment in the United States, which is an awful long way from where I live. Have a great, great weekend.